Hi, good afternoon. I just want to say I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be anywhere and to be able to speak truth. You know, that is one of, thank you. You know, I don't really know what I want to say, so I figure I'll just tell my story very briefly. You know, prior to COVID, I was really dedicated to medical education. I taught medical students and residents and fellows. I ran training programs. I published, I lectured widely. I was already widely lecturing on a subspecialty field, and I really enjoyed teaching. And the things that I would learn that I found that would help patients, that I could treat patients, especially the dying patients, because I was an ICU doctor, I thought it really important that I share it and teach. And so I was really proud of my career as a medical educator. And you know, what happened in COVID is I began to be expert on various facets of COVID, really studying therapeutics on how to treat this disease. And I have to tell you that many of us around the world discovered very early that this is a highly treatable disease. And the problem is we kind of figured out COVID early on, but what I've learned since then is really about the world at large and society. And I have to tell you, I was paying attention to the world somewhat. I was living in ICUs over the last 2 decades. And when I came out, and I came out into the world trying to share my medical knowledge, what I discovered is that nothing made sense. The world has gone mad, absolutely mad, and I couldn't figure out why. And well, I would also say as the core of what I do for a living is I'm a diagnostician. You don't know how to heal anything unless you know what's wrong. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. And I came to the realization that we now live in a world with massive consolidated propaganda and censorship. And it has really estranged me from most of what I trusted in society. I used to believe in government. I used to believe in public health agencies. I particularly used to believe in medical journals. I was a little skeptical of media, but not nearly skeptical enough. And that's where I started. And after becoming expert and discovering truths about many facets of COVID, I discovered that I was living in a world of liars. Everywhere was raining down on me lies. And, you know, I was both scared and I was really sad, and I still am, although a little less scared now. And I do think that some of these lies are being uncovered. I do feel responsible to continue to come out and call out these lies. But to discover, you know, to wake up every day over these last 3 years and see newspapers around the world just harping in synchrony about lies and lies and lies. And I'll just talk briefly about ivermectin, because that's really what kind of transformed me and kind of gave me an insight into the world that I wouldn't have had, is that I knew truths, and I knew none of them were being propagated in media, in medical journals, out of the mouths of very respected agency officials, and it happened in every country in lockstep. And I couldn't figure out why, but that's what led me to become much more skeptical, much less trusting. And then I realized that almost everything I was listening to, every mouth it came from, all had horrific conflicts of interest. In fact, I would argue that now anyone employed for an international health organization or a big health system or a hospital cannot speak freely or openly. And because I discovered, I just thought people would want to hear from me, and as I started to give what I thought was sound medical advice based on deep research, I found that I kept losing jobs. I lost like 3 jobs. I was being attacked in the media, and that's not what used to happen when I gave lectures. I used to give lectures and everyone was very happy that I would teach them, and they liked and bought my textbooks, but suddenly now it seemed like I was under attack. And it's not just me, it's me and my colleagues. And I wrote this book called The War on Ivermectin. I'll just tell you briefly. You know, I decided to write that book one particular day. It was March of 2021. If any of you know, I gave this testimony in the US Senate in December of 2020, and it went quote unquote viral to very good effect. I think people started to ask questions about ivermectin, look into ivermectin all around the world. I know within days I was contacted by numbers of organizations from different countries that wanted me to do interviews, and I was very happy to teach. But you know, I couldn't figure out, besides the general interest that I was seeing, again, nothing but attacks. And then I saw lies being printed, and they were just wanting to what's called debunk ivermectin. They wanted everyone to stop this notion that this medicine could treat COVID. And I was very confused by that response of the world. And things continued to happen that were really bad. My papers were getting retracted. The internet was coming after us. Whoever I interviewed with or spoke with was getting deplatformed, their videos taken down, they were getting demonetized. We would try to process payments for or donations for my nonprofit, and the payment processors would drop us. News wires would not work with us anymore. I mean, we literally became pariahs or sort of enemies of the state. And at one point, even our government called us domestic terrorists, but that's another story. But you know, what happened was in March of 2021, I woke up one day and I opened an email, and it was from a professor who I didn't know, and there was 2 lines, and he said to me, "Dear Dr. Kory, what they're doing to ivermectin, they've been doing to vitamin D for decades." And he included a link to an article called The Disinformation Playbook. And that article outlines 5 tactics that industries deploy when science emerges that is inconvenient to their interests. And I will tell you, there's been no more inconvenient science than the science supporting the efficacy of ivermectin. And I read that article and I saw the tactics, very short, clear explanations with examples throughout decades of how industries do this. They attack science, and I could think up of half a dozen examples for each of those tactics. And I realized on that day that I literally was in a small nonprofit that was pitted against the entire pharmaceutical industry, and they were coming after us. And I realized that it was all disinformation. I consider myself somewhat of an expert in studying disinformation, not propagating it. And I wrote that book, and it's structured, and I will tell you, that book tells the story of this coordinated global attack suppressing the idea of that ivermectin works. And one of the ways in which they did it, so a lot of it was censorship, so it prevented that information from getting to you. And the journals censored heavily. They never published, the big journals never published positive trials. The agencies always criticized it, the media criticized it. They used public relations campaigns. You guys remember the horse dewormer campaign? Yeah, right, where they never called it ivermectin, it's just a horse dewormer. But I had to witness that. And another tactic is called the blitz, where they go after the researchers themselves. And I will say, my group, the Frontline COVID-19 Critical Care Alliance, if you look at our body of work and our careers, we're literally the group, they're one of the most highly published authors in the history of critical care medicine, led by Professor Paul Marik. But that credibility meant nothing. Our careers all ended. Our academic careers stopped. Some were forced to resign, some were run out of their hospitals. I was just asked not to show up anymore. And so it's been quite a journey. But what I want you to take away, and what I try to put in my book, is I think you need to understand how they coordinate these lies, the power they have in communicating to them. And you guys have to remember what propaganda is. I'm going to finish. Please understand, this is my definition of propaganda. It's a story or a message that gets you to think or act in a certain way. And if you look and listen carefully to everything you're presented, all the information coming at you from whatever source, remember that almost all of it is subliminal messaging. They want you to think or act in in another way. And so it's literally mind control, and they get you to believe lies that will hurt you. Those lies will kill you. To believe that it's one of the safest medicines in history that can actually treat this disease is actually a dangerous one that you shouldn't use. That has caused millions of people to die around the world. So this stuff is serious, and this is why I'm here today. This is why I will show up anytime I'm asked, anytime I'm given the opportunity. I'm going to fight back, because the only enemy of propaganda is truth and truth tellers, and they come after us, but I'm still standing and I'll keep coming. Thank you.